All right now, let me tell y'all something straight from the heart, because what just happened, oh, it ain't no small step. This ain't just another press conference. This ain't just another tweet storm or newspaper headline. No, baby, this is history unfolding in real time. You better lean in and pay attention, 'cause India just broke the final chain of Western control. And when I say that, I mean it shook up the whole world order like thunder rolling down from the Himalayas. See, for decades, and I mean decades, India was treated like just another player on the chessboard. Not the king, not even the queen, just a pawn. A backup dancer in a global performance choreographed by Western powers. They'd hand over instructions, cut some deals, make a few promises, and expect India to say, "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Anything else, sir?" But that India, that old India, she gone. Because the India we looking at today is bold. She's fierce. She's not asking permission, she's setting the rules. She ain't begging to sit at the table. She's bringing the table. Let me put it like this. For years the West controlled global finance, global trade, global tech, global power, global narrative. You were either in their club or outside looking in. They told India what to buy, who to trade with, who to sanction, what to think, what to say, how to vote, how to grow, and if India pushed back, oh, best believe there'd be concerns. Raised, ratings dropped, currency pressure, diplomatic shade thrown all over the place. But see, every empire that ruled by pressure has an expiry date, and India just called their bluff. Now, I ain't talking about one bold move. I'm talking about a collection of power plays that just snapped that final link in the chain that held India down. Starting with trade. Oh yes, they thought they had India hooked on Western imports and Western money. But now, India said, we good. Started trading in rupees with countries that ain't playing that Western game. Russia, UE, Indonesia, even African nations. Everybody seeing India's playbook now and saying, hold up. You mean we don't gotta use the dollar? And India's like, nah baby, not anymore. And that's when the West started sweating, because they know it ain't about the rupee itself. It's about sovereignty. If India controls her trade, her currency, her routes, her rules, then the puppet strings are cut. You can't pull India back into the fold once she learned to stand on her own 2 feet. And right now, India is standing tall like never before. But let's go deeper. Look at energy. For years, the West dictated who got to sell oil to whom. Sanctions here, embargoes there, but India kept buying from Russia when it suited their interest. They didn't blink, they didn't stutter. They said, we'll buy where it's best for us and you'll deal with it. You gotta understand, that's not just about oil.
That's a message to the whole world that India ain't afraid, that India's policy is India first, no matter who's watching. And then there's tech. Woo, let me tell you, this one right here, this is where the West thought they had permanent leverage. Big Silicon Valley giants thinking they run the data game, thinking India's digital future would always be under American control. But India said, you know what, we're building our own. They rolled out UPI and the whole damn world is now copying it. You hear what I said, the world that used to lecture India about innovation is now trying to keep up. France using UPI, Singapore, UE, even Japan studying the blueprint. India didn't just break the chain, India rewired the damn system. And it ain't just apps and platforms, it's semiconductors, AI, cyber defense, and space tech. India ain't outsourcing dreams anymore. They're launching satellites on a budget so lean that NASA and the ESA gotta sit down and rethink life. I mean, Chandrayaan-3 made it to the moon's soft landing, and the cost was less than a Hollywood sci-fi movie. Bruh, who does that? India does, because they no longer waiting on permission or validation. They building their future their way. Now don't even get me started on defense. There was a time when India imported nearly everything.
missiles, jets, tanks, but not anymore. India said, "We gonna make it here and we gonna make it better." And that ain't just patriotism, that's power. See, the ability to defend yourself without relying on the very nations trying to contain you. That's how you break the leash. India's got homegrown missiles that fly faster than sound, drones smarter than ever, and a navy that's patrolling the Indian Ocean like it owns the joint. Because guess what? It does. And y'all wanna know what really snapped the chain? It wasn't just economics or tech or military. It was mindset. It was that moment India looked in the mirror and said, "We don't need to prove ourselves to nobody." That's when it shifted. That's when all the noise faded out and India's voice got louder, clearer, stronger. No more acting like a middle power. No more apologizing for ambition. No more letting somebody else define who they are or what role they're supposed to play. India ain't emerging anymore. India's arrived. And now the world's got no choice but to deal with it. You can see it at summits. Western leaders used to talk at India. Now they lean in when India speaks. They want to partner, not preach. They want to join, not judge. 'Cause they see the numbers, they see the growth, they see the youth, they see the innovation, but more than all that, they see the independence, and that scares them. Because they know once a nation learns how to think for itself, once it builds its own systems, once it walks with pride and purpose, you can't control it no more, and India ain't just walking, India's leading. Now the media won't say it like that. They'll use words like shifting dynamics or geopolitical rebalancing. But let me break it down plain. The empire is cracking. That old colonial blueprint, the one that kept wealth flowing in one direction, power centered in a handful of capitals, and rules written by the few for the many, it just got burned. And the torch, it's in India's hands now. And baby, India's not burning bridges, they're lighting a new path. They doing it with grace. They doing it with grit. They doing it without invading, without exploiting, without playing the dirty game. India said, "We ain't here to dominate. We here to partner, to uplift, to trade fair, to build bridges." And that's the kind of leadership the world been starving for. A leadership that don't bark orders, but listens. That don't hoard power, but shares it. So when I say India broke the final chain, I'm not just talking about a singular event. I'm talking about the end of a cycle, the end of dependency, the end of one-sided deals, the end of being told you can't. Because now India's telling the world, watch us. And the beautiful part is, it ain't just about India. What India just did, that's a blueprint for every nation that ever felt small. Every voice that was ever silenced. Every dream that was ever delayed by someone else's permission. India just proved you don't need to wait on a seat at the table. You can build your own table, decorate it in your colors, speak your language, serve your food, and invite the world to come sit on your terms. That's freedom, not just political, not just economic, but spiritual. That's soul, deep kind of freedom that no sanctions, no headlines, no power plays can take away. So yeah, the final chain gone. And what we're witnessing now is not just a rising power, it's a freed power. That's a whole different energy. That's what's keeping the West up at night, because they ain't just dealing with competition. They dealing with liberation, and once that liberation starts spreading, once other nations see what India just did and start thinking, we could do that too. Oh baby, the game ain't just changed, the board just flipped, so hold tight, because this ain't the end. This is the beginning of something bigger, something global, something unstoppable. India's assertive foreign policy shows it's not choosing sides, it's building its own axis of power. And that right there, that's the most powerful shift happening on the global chessboard today. See, for decades, geopolitics was a tug-of-war. You were either on Team West or Team East. You either followed Washington's playbook or you echoed Moscow's agenda. But India said, no, we ain't playing that game. India looked at the map, looked at its people, looked at its potential, and said, we'll write our own chapter, thank you very much. Now, this didn't happen overnight. It's been building for years like pressure beneath the surface, but in 2025 it became undeniable. The world started seeing a new kind of India, one that wasn't just reacting to power, but radiating it. This wasn't about diplomacy as usual. It was about redefining what diplomacy even means in a world that's tired of Cold War leftovers and colonial hangovers. India didn't say, pick me. India said, watch me, and that confidence, that swagger, it's turning heads from Washington to Beijing to Brussels and beyond, because India's strategy isn't about being anti-anyone. It's about being pro-India. That's the difference. The West asks, are you with us? The East asks, will you support us? And India replies, we support ourselves first. The rest depends on the deal. That's bold, that's rare, and in today's world, that's revolutionary. It's easy to be non-aligned when you're weak and don't matter. But it's a whole different ball game to be non-aligned when you're strong and everybody wants you, and make no mistake, everybody does want India. They want India's markets. They want India's supply chains. They want India's defense purchases, its trade routes, its technology, its talent, its voice. But India's not giving out access just to be polite. India's dealing from a place of power, and with every agreement, it's making sure one thing is crystal clear. We ain't your pawn, we're a player in our own right. Take a look at India's role in BRICS. While some see it as a counterweight to the G7, India sees it as a launch pad to something new. Not a mirror image of Western hegemony, but a platform that gives voice to those who have been historically sidelined. India doesn't just attend summits to nod along. India shows up with proposals, with frameworks, with solutions, and most importantly, with alternatives. Alternatives to the dollar, alternatives to NATO, alternatives to IMF dependency. India is showing the world that you can grow your economy, secure your borders, feed your people, and still retain your dignity. But it ain't just BRICS. Look at the Middle East. India's building economic corridors that bypass traditional Western routes. The India-Middle East, Europe economic corridor, that's not just a trade route. That's a declaration. It says, we can connect East and West on our own terms. And who's paying attention? Europe, the Gulf, even Israel, because India isn't just drawing lines. It's drawing new maps. And while we're talking about strategy, let's not forget Africa. The West treated Africa like a charity case. China treated it like a resource pit. But India's treating Africa like a partner. There's respect in those handshakes. India isn't just sending aid, it's sending teachers, engineers, entrepreneurs. It's building solar projects, training coders, digitizing schools. That's not influence through dominance. That's influence through trust, and the global South is responding. What makes this approach so potent is that India doesn't come with colonial baggage. India doesn't come with imperial scars. India was the colonized, not the colonizer, and that history, that gives India a credibility that the West can't fake and the East can't buy, its authenticity. It's shared struggle, and it's powerful as hell in international rooms where people are tired of lectures and hungry for real leadership. Let's not ignore the Quad either. Now, some folks say, oh, India's aligning with the U.S., in the Indo-Pacific, but slow down. Look deeper. India joined the Quad, yes, but it didn't turn into a junior partner. It didn't sign on to every American narrative. It didn't go around wagging fingers at China on someone else's cue. India plays that card carefully. It cooperates on maritime security, on tech exchange, on health systems. but it doesn't get dragged into the ideological swamp. India's in it for Indian interests, not for any agenda printed in Washington. And China knows this. That's why there's tension, but also respect. India and China may clash along borders, but on the global stage, there's a silent recognition. These are the two ancient civilizations that are once again commanding attention. They both know the West doesn't want either of them too strong, but only one of them, India, is managing to rise without trapping others in debt, without buying silence, without exporting surveillance. And that, more than anything, makes India's rise more sustainable, more respected, and more difficult to contain. Meanwhile, in Europe, leaders are realizing that India can't be ignored. The same countries that once dismissed India as a developing nation are now scrambling to sign deals. France is selling Rafale jets. Germany is talking green hydrogen. Italy wants deeper digital cooperation. And why? Because India is stable, growing, democratic, and holds the keys to the largest youth population on Earth. It's not just a market, it's a movement. But even as India makes all these deals, it keeps its center of gravity at home. That's the masterstroke. While engaging with the world, India never loses its balance. It doesn't sell out its sovereignty. It doesn't shift its values to please a foreign ally. Whether it's 5G infrastructure, data protection, environmental standards, or defense procurement, India's message is clear. We decide, we implement, we benefit. This assertive stance is also visible in how India deals with criticism. Western think tanks, media outlets, and foreign NGOs have often tried to paint India into a corner, pointing fingers, stirring up narratives, and playing the moral police. But India no longer bends. India counters. It explains, it defends, and when needed it pushes back. It's no longer about being liked. It's about being respected. You see, respect comes from self-belief. And right now, India believes in itself like never before. That belief is rooted not just in GDP numbers or military might. It's in the civilizational strength that runs deep in India's veins. India doesn't borrow its identity from ideology. It draws from a 5,000-year-old legacy of resilience, reform, and renewal. It understands diplomacy not as a power game but as dharma, a duty to uphold balance, peace, and justice. And that makes Indian foreign policy spiritually different. It ain't just about who wins, it's about how you win. And yet, India's not naive. It sees the global traps. It knows when the West talks about rules-based order, they often mean our rules. It knows when the East offers loans, they often come with strings. So India's building its own axis of power, one built on autonomy, not allegiance. It's forming multilaterals, trade blocs, and tech alliances that don't revolve around a single superpower. That's innovation in diplomacy. That's disruption in politics. And that's what makes India the most unpredictable and influential player in the game today. The impact of this foreign policy isn't just international, it's psychological. For too long, Indians were told by outsiders who they were, told they weren't ready, weren't stable, weren't capable of leading, but now they see their leaders speaking boldly on global stages. They see their diplomats negotiating confidently. They see India leading, not lagging, and that changes the mindset of a whole generation. They don't aspire to leave India anymore. They aspire to build it. When a nation controls its foreign policy narrative, it controls its future. India is doing deals that protect its farmers, elevate its workers, modernize its infrastructure, and secure its tech base. It's saying yes when it benefits the people and no when it doesn't. That's power. Not arrogance, power, not aggression. Clarity, and this clarity is shaking up the old guard, because the old guard's strength was always in creating dependency. But India's model is creating sovereignty, not just for itself, but for anyone willing to walk alongside. It's showing the world you can be strong without being cruel. You can be proud without being oppressive. You can engage without being entangled. India's building an axis of power that is not about domination, but coordination. It doesn't want followers, it wants equals. It doesn't want to be feared, it wants to be trusted. And that's why it's winning not just allies,